Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello, and thanks for joining me. I have a really fun video. I'm playing with some cling-mounted rubber stamps from Darcie's Heart and Home. This is a new brand for me, and I also got the tin pins that go along with this set. I recently visited a paper crafting store here in Chicagoland, and it's called Craft Fancy, and it was the first time I had been there, and it was just a lovely store. I found this stamp set there. It was discounted, which was a bonus, and I thought this was a really darling set. I had to take the foam out of my mini Misty because these rubber stamps are thicker than your clear stamps. I'm going to stamp them onto a piece of 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm using my favorite Extreme Black ink from MFT. So I've seen other crafters use these stamps in their videos, and I wanted to give it a try. It looked like a lot of fun. Since these are new stamps, I do end up inking them up a few times just to get them to stamp out clearly. I'm going to be using my Copic markers to color in these images. And I'm going to color them exactly as they're colored on the packaging. If you're going to use the tin pins that coordinate with these stamps, then you'll want to use the same colors so they match up. Otherwise, if you weren't going to use the tin pins, you could color them any way you'd like. But it was kind of a fun challenge to see if I could make this appear just as it is on the packaging. And it helped me become even more familiar with the Copic markers that I have in my collection. I have the Copic marker sheet that you can download for free from the Copic markers website to keep track of your collection and to see what the markers look like. But I still used a piece of scrap paper just to see what the colors would look like blended together. I kept grabbing colors from my collection that were just too dark, so I found myself pulling out my very, very lightest colors. When I'm done with my coloring here, I'll show you their example sheet again, and you can see how you think I did on this. I thought they matched up pretty well once I put on the tin pins. This was also a very relaxing coloring session because I didn't have to think of what colors I'd like to use. It was already laid out for me, so I was just trying to copy their example. It was a lot of fun. I'll turn on some music for a minute while I finish up my coloring, and I'll catch you up at the end. Okay, here they are side by side. I think my coloring did turn out a little bit darker, but not bad. I'm going to fussy cut these out off camera just to save time. And I'm going to get on with the panel that I'm going to put behind my images. I'm using some new Distress Oxide inks. I have Squeezed Lemonade here, and this is going to be the background for my owl. I'm blending this onto a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I want the color to kind of fade out at the edges, so I'm not covering the whole panel with this Distress Oxide. I'm really loving these new colors that came out this year. And this ink that I'm using here is called Tattered Rose, and I think it's my favorite of all the Distress Oxide inks. It's just gorgeous. My two cards are going to be very similar, but just different color schemes. So same idea here. I'm just putting on a bit of ink, and I don't want it to go clear out to the edges. This cardstock measures 4.5 by 3.25. I used one of my faux stitched dies to cut this out. I'm using my mini Misty to stamp out the sentiments right onto this card panel. Since I can't see through these rubber cling stamps, I'm going to use a piece of acetate just to get my placement right. I allowed the Distress Oxide on these panels to dry before doing this stamping. I wanted to make sure to get a crisp, clean sentiment on these panels. And I don't get the placement right the first time. In fact, this bottom sentiment I end up stamping upside down. So I was very glad for the acetate. And then I just use a tissue to wipe it clean again and finagle it around a little bit until I get this placement just right. There's something about these red rubber stamps that I just love. They stamp out so nicely. And the sentiments in this set are so cute. They stamp out kind of sketchy looking. I really like it. Now that I got everything worked out, I can just pull off the acetate and stamp right onto my card panel. This Squeezed Lemonade Distress Oxide is a really fun color. I didn't have this in my Distress ink collection, so this is the first time I'm playing with this ink. With this color of ink, I should say. What's your favorite color out of all of these new Distress inks that were just released? It's really hard to choose. Like I said, mine is definitely the Tattered Rose. Now I'm going to start assembling my cards. I'm using some dot liner to adhere these pieces together. Isn't this piece of patterned paper here gorgeous? It's from MFT. I've had this in my collection for a while, but this is the first I've used it. I'm just loving it. It's called Roses All Over. I'm not using any foam tape or craft foam for my elements to put this card together. I want it to be pretty flat because the tin pin will add a dimensional cuteness all of its own. So I wasn't sure how these work, so I'm just trying to pull it off here. And it has a glue dot on the back. And I'm just trying to adhere that back to the tin pin, but it's not very sticky. So I decide to come in with some smaller, stickier glue dots of my own and just adhere those to the back of these tin pins. I can understand why they would put these low-tack glue dots on the back of their pins, because probably the recipients will want to take them off the card, and they won't rip the card once you pull them off, especially if the recipient is a child. They'll want to take that tin pin right off, I'm sure. So maybe I should have used the glue dot that it came with, but I just didn't want it falling off when somebody opens the envelope and sees the card. Have any of you tried these tin pin cards before? I really like the effect of these tin pins on the card, so I'm going to get another set of these. However, I'm going to have to make up 2 more of these sister cards, so I can send one to each of my 3 wonderful sisters. I'm going to add some Nouveau drops to this card. I had the perfect color of Nouveau drops that match my Tattered Rose Distress Oxide inks. This first drop that I put here, I got an air bubble in it. And so I'm just searching for a pin that I can just use to pop that air bubble. And then it turns out just fine after that, but you want to make sure you get all of the air bubbles out. These Nouveau drops add a fun dimension and interest to your cards. And then I just flick the underside of the card just to get the dots to flatten out a bit. For my L card, I didn't have Nouveau drops that match, so I'm just pulling out a few enamel dots that I had in my collection. And they weren't the perfect color of purple to match, but I still thought they looked pretty cute. Please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also click on the bell if you'd like to be notified when I publish a new video. And don't forget to share this video on your favorite social media. So here are my 2 cards completed. And as I said before, I'm definitely going to be making up more of these in the future. They were so much fun. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Bye.